And would you pray with me? Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, you who are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So we heard this passage from the Gospel of John about the time when Jesus is at the temple, and as usual, especially when he is in a public space, there are Pharisees and Sadducees and priests of a variety who are trying to catch him and try to find something that they can hold against him, because they didn't like what he was saying. It seemed to be that he was saying that he might be the Messiah, and they just didn't think that that was right. And so they bring a woman to him who has been caught in the act of adultery. And I want you for a moment to just put yourself in the mindset of this woman, of that moment that might be in your history, in your life story, when you were the one who was called out, who had made a mistake, and the finger was pointing at you. What must it have felt for her? What was she thinking and feeling? I'm sure she was feeling regret for what she had done. She knew it was wrong, probably knew it was wrong as she was doing it. Knew that she was not only going to be hurting people that she cared for and people that this man cared for, but she was going to be hurting society and hurting God's heart in some way. And it must have been a horrible feeling for her to be standing there so vulnerable in front of them, knowing full well, even before they said it, that the response to that would be for her to be stoned to death. I can't even imagine what that must be like. To stand and have the community in which you live throw stones at you, even after you've dropped and are unconscious. It must have been doubly troubling for her to realize that the man who was just as guilty as she was nowhere to be found, and wasn't going to face the same kind of ridicule and calling out that she had. And those people who had brought her, these higher-ups, these Sadducees and priests and Pharisees, they asked Jesus, "What should we do?" Remember, stoning was required by Moses. And so Jesus takes a moment and draws in the ground. And then finally lifts his head and says to all of them, "You, any of you who are without sin, cast the first stone." And in so doing, there was a part, I think, of everyone there who, at least for a split second, put themselves in the place of this woman, knowing full well that they had done things wrong. That they had probably done things as wrong as she had done. Now, I left off the end they, go ahead.
They disappeared.
After they dropped their stones, they dropped them. And evidently that means that they had those stones ready. They came prepared. Jesus requires of us, invites us into a lifestyle that the early Christians called the way. That was not just a system of beliefs, but a way of interacting with other people and with God that was different than people had seen before. That way included forgiveness, extravagant forgiveness. And he set the example. We're about to celebrate a meal that celebrates that sacrifice that he made for us. And it is symbolic in so many ways of what humility and forgiveness is all about. They dropped their stones. The earlier passage, that long one that I had Kendra read, is about a slave named Onesimus. And Onesimus had run away from the people who owned him. And he ran away to be with Paul, but he ran away from slavery. And Paul knew that part of what everyone needed in those relationships was forgiveness and reunion, reconciliation. Because Paul understood that meal and that sacrifice that Jesus made. And so he writes a letter to them saying, we know, I know, that this person ran away from you. He didn't like you much. He didn't like the way you treated him. He left. And I know that that's against the law. But I want you to reconcile with him. I'm sending him to you so that you can heal those relationships, so that you can forgive him and he can forgive you, and you can be reconciled. You can have relationships again. That was a big one. That was a big ask. But that's what Paul did. So, as I finish up, I'm going to begin passing around markers for you to use on your stone. And I want you to think about something or some things that you could place on there, that there is some kind of forgiveness that you need to give to someone else. Now, we're going to deal with being forgiven ourselves next month. But this month, I would like you to try to think of something, someone who you need to forgive in some way or another. And I want you to write it on that stone, and then we're going to build an altar. You're going to come up and place those stones on the altar. And they're going to be an invitation for us to begin that process of forgiveness. And it's important to note that at all times, we have the opportunity to forgive, and when we forgive, we're letting go of something big that is keeping us from the life and the way that Jesus gave to us. But we are also participating in his sacrificial forgiveness of all of us. So I want you to put, it could be a name, it could be anything that you might think about. And once you've placed that on your stone, I'd like you each to take that up and create our own altar. If you place it around the cup and the bread that are symbols of Jesus' forgiveness of us.